faculty, students, alumni, and those of you joining us from the far corners of the world, aloha. Aloha. My name is Brent Green, and I represent the English Language Teaching and Learning faculty as the TESOL Program Coordinator. Today, we are honored to present the BYU Hawaii Alice Pack Lecture. We appreciate all those who have worked to make this event possible, and would like to specifically acknowledge the BYU Hawaii Media Services who are making this lecture live on the BYU Hawaii site. Tanya Smith, our ELT Administrative Assistant, and our Dean, Dr. Mark Wolfersberger. We also welcome all of you in the audience to this first ever live streamed Alice Pack lecture, and thank you for being here. As is customary at BYU Hawaii, we will now begin with an invocation by Stephen Carter, Assistant Professor in the English Language Teaching and Learning Program.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here both physically and virtually for this event. We're grateful for this tradition. We're also grateful for the life and work of Neil Anderson, his efforts over the years to be a fantastic colleague, a fantastic person, and an example. We pray that the Spirit will be here with us as we listen, and we pray that Dr. Anderson will feel buoyed up as he gives his comments and will be able to speak clearly and deliver whatever he has prepared. We thank thee for thy love for us. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Steve. I will now say a few words about Alice Pack and her legacy, and then introduce our speaker. Alice Pack was an amazing person. Although she began her college education rather late in life, she was 53, she took an overload each year and graduated in 3 years. She went on to obtain her MA in TESOL at the University of Hawaii, and later her PhD. She's the co-founder of the BYU Hawaii TESOL major and co-founding editor of our own TESOL Reporter. She taught in our program from 1967 to 1980. She wrote many language textbooks and developed language software programs. And in her later years, donated the royalties from those works to BYU Hawaii. The Alice Pack Scholarship, which was created from these royalties, helps pay for BYU Hawaii TESOL majors to attend the International TESOL Convention each year. The Alice Pack Lecture began in 2011 with the inaugural lecture presented by Alice's former colleague and co-author, Lynn Hendrickson. This lecture was established on her 100th birthday as a way of honoring her legacy at BYU Hawaii. Our speaker at the 2021 Alice Pack Lecture is Dr. Neil J. Anderson. Neil Anderson is a professor of English Language Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Education and Social Work at Brigham Young University of Hawaii. Professor Anderson is the author or co-author of over 50 books, book chapters, and journal articles. His research interests include second language reading, language learner strategies, learner self-assessment, and ELT leadership development. Professor Anderson was the 2014 recipient of the prestigious TESOL International Association James Elatus Service Award. In 2016, on the 50th anniversary of the TESOL International Association, he was recognized as one of the 50 individuals who has made a significant contribution to the profession of teaching English to speakers of other languages. Neil's hobbies include running and reading. Dr. Anderson.
Colleagues and friends, good morning and aloha. Aloha. This year marks the 11th annual Alice Pack Lecture at BYU, Hawaii, and I am honored to be among the 10 previous recipients of this award. I did not know Alice Pack, but from the earliest days of my studies in the MA TESOL program at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, I was aware of Dr. Pack and of the significant contributions that she made to this campus. I'm particularly grateful for Dr. Lynn Henriksen's monograph detailing Dr. Pack's contributions at BYU, Hawaii. Each semester that I teach the TESOL 310 class on this campus, I have the students read that monograph so that they too can learn about Dr. Pack. Indeed, we each owe her a debt of gratitude for her vision, her grit, and for her desire to see that English language teaching and learning has a significant role on this campus. At the outset, I want to thank my wife for introducing me to TESOL. As an undergraduate business major at BYU, I experienced a degree crisis. As a junior, I was enrolled in an accounting class that caused me to completely rethink my undergraduate studies. I returned from the first day of fall classes in 1978 to our small apartment, discouraged and questioning the assumption that I would be an international businessman. Over the course of a few days, Kathy suggested that I consider the MA program in teaching English as a second language. She had been accepted to the TESOL program when we got engaged, but she had not enrolled in classes. Because she had graduated with her BA degree, we made a decision that she would remain at home and we would start our family as I completed my BA studies. As I was taking business classes, I was also taking classes in Spanish because I was teaching Spanish at the Missionary Training Center. After meeting with an academic advisor, I learned that by taking only a few more classes, I would be able to complete a BA degree in Spanish. I took the accelerated path to graduation with my BA and started the TESOL MA program the next semester. I graduated with my MA degree at the same time I would have graduated with my BA degree. I am very grateful that Kathy contributed to making this major career shift for me. I am now within weeks of completing my teaching as a university professor. The past 40 years have provided rich and rewarding opportunities to engage in teaching English to speakers of other languages and to training teachers entering the profession. I have had the opportunity to teach at 3 universities here in the United States, and I've had extended periods of time outside of the US working and teaching in refugee language programs in Southeast Asia and with language learners and teachers in Costa Rica and Guatemala. I have also had the opportunity of interacting with teachers in over 50 countries as part of speaking invitations to teacher conferences, training programs through the U.S. Department of State English Specialist Programs, publisher workshops for books that I have published, and TESOL leadership development engagements. Before I retire to new adventures, I want to step back and reflect on lessons learned. There's one overarching concept that ties together the major lessons that I have learned over my career. That concept is relationships. In his 2019 book, The Second Mountain, A Quest for a Moral Life, David Brooks emphasizes the vital role that relationships play in our lives. quote, "As adults, we measure our lives by the quality of our relationships and the quality of our service to those relationships. Life is a qualitative endeavor, not a quantitative one. It's not how many, but how thick and how deep. Defining what a quality relationship looks like is a central task in any moral ecology." End quote. The relationships I have built with colleagues and students have made all the difference in what I have learned. There are many lessons that I've learned during the past 40 years, but I can summarize hundreds of relationship experiences into 3 major lessons. First, expect the unexpected. Second, foster a culture of collaboration. And third, connect your scholarship to your teaching and your teaching to your scholarship. Each of these 3 relationship lessons have resulted in forming and building lasting friendships with others that have molded me into a very different person today than I was 40 years ago. I am confident that the lessons that I have learned can also be beneficial for others, regardless of the stage you are at in your profession. First, expect the unexpected. For some reason, we believe that we are in complete control of the events that occur in our lives. We believe that the private decisions that we make day by day shape us into the person we see ourselves becoming. I have come to understand that we must expect the unexpected. Many of the good things that have occurred in my life have come unexpectedly. These unexpected experiences have often come as challenges that have caused me to rely on key relationships to overcome the challenges. One way that I have come to look at the idea of expecting the unexpected is through the phrase, question all assumptions. Quinn introduced the concept of, quote, challenging your normal assumptions, end quote. His work led me to the creation of the phrase that has guided me over the last 7 years, and in most activities and decisions, question all assumptions. Quinn asserts that, quote, deep change is a fundamentally different process because it requires people to develop new expectations. As people experience deep change, they move from their old assumptions to a new set of assumptions. They start to see, feel, and think differently, end quote. I have not always questioned my assumptions. This is a lesson that emerged later in my career. In retrospect, this lesson has provided me with opportunities to grow and develop as a TESOL professional. Allow me to provide an example from my career. I completed my MA degree in TESOL in December of 1980. My first full-time teaching assignment was at the newly organized English Language Center at BYU. The program had designated a limited number of 3-year non-renewable contracts for newly graduated students from the MA program. The rationale for these positions was to provide full-time employment that could serve as a stepping stone to further employment and/or future education. Mark Wolfersberger and Nancy Tadafiti on our faculty here at BYU Hawaii each served in these positions when they graduated with their MA degrees from BYU. Within the first few weeks of full-time employment at the ELC, I knew that I wanted to earn a PhD. I knew that I wanted to be engaged in teaching the next generation of T-cell professionals. I set my sights on the PhD program at the University of California at Los Angeles. One of my mentors, Cheryl Brown Mitchell, earned her PhD from UCLA, and a friend from my MA studies, Mary Lee Scott Call, was enrolled in the program. I was so focused on earning my PhD from UCLA that it never occurred to me that I might be rejected. In April of 1984, I received the long-awaited letter from the admissions office at UCLA. I was devastated when I read that I had not been accepted. My world crumbled. I had no backup plan. It took a few weeks for me to sort through what I should do. Through very careful mentoring and guidance from Professors Harold S. Madsen and C. Ray Graham from BYU, new plans emerged. Based on their input and guidance, I applied for the PhD program at the University of Texas at Austin, and I applied for a position with the Center for Applied Linguistics at the Refugee Service Center based in Manila, Philippines. I was accepted to the PhD program, and I was offered a position with the Center for Applied Linguistics as the Program Associate for Measurement and Evaluation. I did not fully understand at the time, but I was learning to expect the unexpected. From this experience, I've also learned that in life, we want options. I should never have assumed that I would be accepted to UCLA. I should never have applied to a single PhD program. Because I applied to graduate school at UT Austin and applied for the position with the Center for Applied Linguistics, I suddenly had options. I was then in a position to make an informed choice. I accepted the position with Cal, and I petitioned UT Austin to delay my acceptance for 2 years. That allowed me to have extremely positive experiences working at refugee programs in the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia. I was in a much stronger position to enter the PhD program at UT Austin and successfully complete the coursework and dissertation within 3 years. My rejection from UCLA provided 2 professional options I had never expected. Working for the Center for Applied Linguistics provided the opportunity for our family to live in the Philippines. I was able to travel multiple times to refugee programs in the Philippines and Thailand and Indonesia, followed by studying in a PhD program that was ultimately a much better fit for me and my family. I built collaborative relationships with colleagues at the Center for Applied Linguistics and at UT Austin that were both personally and professionally rewarding. These were completely unexpected events for me and my family. Expect the unexpected and enjoy it. Number 2, foster a culture of collaboration. As a language teaching professional, I have had many opportunities to collaborate with others. Most of the collaborative opportunities have come unexpectedly. Mercer and Dornier point out that the value of building a culture of collaboration in the language classroom. I see it equally beneficial to build a culture of collaboration within our professional communities. I'd like to highlight 3 examples from my career of fostering a culture of collaboration. First, a culture of collaboration exists within professional associations. One of the concepts that I learned early in my MA studies at BYU was that we should be joining professional associations. While still a graduate student, I joined the TESOL International Association, and I also joined Intermountain TESOL, the affiliate of TESOL for professionals living in Utah and Idaho. Early in my membership in ITSOL, I met Marianne Christensen, then a faculty member at Snow College in Ephraim, Utah. When Marianne was president of ITSOL, she invited me to serve as the treasurer of the association. This invitation resulted in a friendship and collaboration that has lasted for years. In 1993, Marianne had been elected to the TESOL International Association Board of Directors as the convention program chair for the 1995 convention that was to be held in Long Beach, California. She invited me to serve as her associate program chair. Serving as the associate program chair introduced me to the workings of the TESOL Board of Directors, and I knew that I wanted to put my name forward to serve in leadership opportunities within TESOL. I was elected by the membership of the TESOL International Association to serve as the convention program chair for the 1998 convention that was held in Seattle, Washington. After serving in that role from 1997 to 1999, I was elected by the membership to serve as TESOL president. That opportunity provided me the opportunity to serve as president-elect, then president, and 2 years as past president. During the years of service on the TESOL International Association Boards of Directors, I had the opportunity of building collaborative associations with women and men who served in the roles as members of the Board of Directors and as presidents. Mark Algren, Kathleen Bailey, Dina Barai, Marianne Christensen, Christine Coombe, Donald Freeman, Joyce Kling, Lucila Lopriere, Denise Murray, David Noonan, and Luciana de Oliveira are dear friends, not just professional colleagues. It's interesting to me just saying their names. I had no idea I would feel this kind of emotion. I feel a special connection to each of the presidents of the TESOL International Association. From Harold Allen, who first served in 1966, to the current president, Gabriela Klekova, fostering a culture of collaboration within professional associations has provided significant opportunities to work with others. I'd like to briefly mention one additional organization. I also had the opportunity to serve on the board of directors of the International Research Foundation and to serve as the chair of the board. Although not a professional association, TURF's mission is to provide, quote, specialized attention, giving high priority to the development of a coherent program of language learning research, teaching research, and information dissemination. My service on the board provided additional opportunities to foster a culture of collaboration in fundraising to support research in our profession. I invite you to learn more about TURF by visiting their website at turf.org. A second example of fostering a culture of collaboration relates to making international connections. In February of 2001, I was invited to participate in a U.S. Department of State English Language Specialist program in Suez Canal University in Suez, Egypt. The focus of the training was on designing self-assessment tasks for EFL learners. The training was in 2 parts. I met with the teachers in February, and then I returned to the US while they worked on developing self-assessment tasks for their students. I was to return in September. My flight was scheduled for September 13th, 2001. Now, pause and think. What was happening in the world in September of 2001? Because of the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers and in other locations on September 11th, all flights in the US were grounded. I do not remember how long it took, but as soon as the flights were opened, I was on a plane to meet with my colleagues at Suez Canal University. Many people were concerned about me traveling to the Middle East at such a point in time. I arrived in Suez and entered the training room. As I entered with my colleagues, the Egyptians stood and applauded. I was overcome with emotion. I asked why they were applauding. One teacher stepped forward and said that they were sure that I would not return and complete the training. They were sure that the media reports and the terrorist attacks in the US would discourage me from returning to meet with them. I shared with them that many people were concerned, but that I was not. To those that were concerned, I said, I know that my Muslim sisters and brothers will protect me from any danger while I am in Egypt. That brought another round of applause and emotional embraces that I will always remember. Collaborating with international colleagues has been a significant part of my career. My final example of fostering a culture of collaboration focuses on collaborating with students. Unfortunately, I cannot mention all of these relationships. I have worked with tremendous students at Ohio University, BYU, and here at BYU Hawaii. While on the faculty at BYU, I had the opportunity to interact with extremely motivated and talented students. It was in that context that I first met Rebecca Roberts, Mark Wolfersberger, and Nancy Tarafiti. Those of you at BYU Hawaii know Rebecca Roberts as Rebecca Wolfersberger. But when I first met her, she was just getting to know Mark. In the TESOL 577 class in the Smith Family Living Center at BYU. Both Mark and Nancy served as my research assistants during their time as graduate students at BYU. Today, of course, I do not think of Mark and Becky and Nancy as former graduate students, but as trusted colleagues and friends. Mark initiated the discussion with me about teaching here at BYU Hawaii. In 2014, I shared with him that I was questioning the assumption that I would end my career at BYU. I wanted to do something different for the final 6 to 8 years of my academic career. I had applied for 2 positions. He asked if I would consider applying for a position at BYU Hawaii. That invitation provided rich and interesting discussions with him and with then academic vice president Max Checketts. After lengthy discussions with both Mark and Max, I submitted my application. Kathy and I were flying home to Utah after completing one interview when we received the call that we were invited to come to BYU, Hawaii for an interview. Following the interviews, I had 2 offers to engage in different and meaningful teaching and scholarship for the final years of my career. I resigned from my position at BYU, and Kathy and I moved to Laie, Hawaii in 2014. Fostering a culture of collaboration has provided these rich and rewarding relationships. Building relationships with colleagues through professional associations, international connections, and with students has enriched my career as a TESOL professional. These relationships have moved beyond simple professional associations to true friendships. Third, connect your scholarship to your teaching and your teaching to your scholarship. Early in my career, I became interested in teaching reading. I decided that this was the area I wanted to explore and develop expertise in so that I could improve my teaching of reading fluency and strategic reading. My desire came as a result of seeing students in my classrooms struggle with slow reading rates and poor strategic reading skills. I decided early in my career that I would connect my scholarship to the challenges that I saw in the classroom in which I was teaching. My classroom teaching experiences in second language reading provided the research focus for my dissertation at the University of Texas at Austin, in which I examined the reading strategies that second language readers use while taking reading comprehension tests versus reading academic textbook material. I presented my dissertation findings at the 11th Annual Language Testing Research Colloquium in San Antonio, Texas in 1989. Professor Andrew Cohen, an external member of my dissertation committee, was in the audience that day. After my presentation, Andrew and I were visiting when Lyle Bachman and Kyle Perkins approached us and asked detailed questions about my data. The editor of Language Testing also approached during this conversation. The conversation and collaboration resulted in a new analysis of my data and a joint presentation the next year at the 12th Annual Language Testing Research Colloquium in San Francisco, California, and in a 1991 publication in Language Testing. By connecting my scholarship to my teaching and my teaching to my scholarship, I have also had the opportunity of making meaningful relationships with other professionals. Connecting scholarship and teaching was the focus of the 2 Fulbright teaching and research fellowships that I received. One to Costa Rica in 2002 to 2003, and the other to Guatemala in 2008 to 2009. These international fellowships provided opportunities for me to connect my teaching and my scholarship. I was interested in going to Costa Rica for multiple reasons. One, both my wife and I speak Spanish, and we wanted an opportunity to be immersed in an environment where Spanish was the first language. It was at a faculty research meeting at the University of Costa Rica that the concept of developing depth in the development of language skills was conceived. I have continued to refine my thinking about how to appropriately integrate the language skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and at the same time developing depth in each of those skills. I have a recent publication in the TESOL Encyclopedia of English Language Teaching on how to develop depth in the development of reading while integrating the other language skills. I lived as a missionary in Guatemala in the 1970s. So returning to Guatemala was a particularly rewarding experience for me. I was able to work with teachers at the Centro de Aprendizaje de Lenguas, Universidad de San Carlos. We met weekly to discuss how to make motivation a more explicit part of language classrooms. The teachers became overwhelmed with my discussions of the theories related to motivation. One day, one of the teachers stopped our discussion and said, "Neil, we cannot possibly do all of this. We have to teach the language." I started to panic because I could see that the focus of my research and my purpose of being a Fulbrighter in Guatemala was being challenged. I paused, looked the teachers in the eye, and said that we needed to shift our thinking away from the theories of motivation to learning how to weave motivational moments into our teaching. I, on the spot, told them that a motivational moment should last no more than 1 minute. With this explanation, the entire attitude of the teachers changed. They unanimously agreed that they could prepare for 4 minutes of classroom instruction to weave motivational moments into the classroom to create the basic motivational conditions, generate initial motivation, maintain and protect motivation, and encourage positive retrospective self-evaluation. One final example of how connecting scholarship and teaching has enriched my career. In 2000, I was invited to deliver a plenary address in Malacca, Malaysia, at the Millennium Malaysia International Conference on English Language Teaching. While at the conference, I was able to interact with David Noonan, who was at that time serving as the president of TESOL International Association. I had recently accepted an invitation from him to contribute a chapter to a book that he was editing entitled Practical English Language Teaching. I shared with David an initial abstract for my chapter, which presented a research-based framework for teaching reading. The Active Skills for Reading framework is one that I have developed and continue to develop as a way to approach the teaching of reading in the second language classroom. At the conference, David introduced me to Ian Martin, an editor with Heinley & Heinley Publisher, now National Geographic Learning. While Ian and David and I were relaxing one evening after the conference, David asked me to share with Ian my framework. David then told Ian that he should get a contract with me to publish a textbook series by this title. Within 6 months of meeting Ian Martin, I had a contract to write 4 textbooks. Active Skills for Reading. The textbook series was successful enough to go into a second and third edition. I might also add that Dr. Noonan is now updating Practical English Language Teaching, and I've just submitted a revised chapter on teaching reading for that anthology. My scholarship has always emerged from issues that I face in language classrooms. Explicitly connecting my scholarship to my teaching and my teaching to my scholarship has resulted in 8 books, 29 book chapters, 27 journal articles, and 3 textbook series, and many opportunities to engage and interact with language teachers around the world. Relationships are core in our lives. Relationships can be rich, purposeful, and meaningful. We do not know how ultimately we might be influenced by others and how we might influence others. The relationships that I have developed over the past 40 years have taught me key lessons. Expect the unexpected, foster a culture of collaboration, and connect scholarship to teaching and teaching to scholarship. I am confident that other professionals can benefit from these same principles. Then, when it is time for you to retire after 40 years in the profession, I hope that you can reflect back on the relationships you have established and retire knowing that you have completed a rich and rewarding career. Mahalo. We've got a few minutes. I wish that there were some way that we could entertain questions from our international colleagues. I've received some emails from colleagues that are watching. But because we don't have a mechanism to receive questions from them, let's see if you've got any questions. That was 6 seconds of wait time. And exactly at 6 seconds, Steve raised his hand. Remember, teachers, give at least 6 seconds, because it's in that 6th second that somebody's going to raise their hand. Steve.
You talked about a book, I think it's called The Second Mountain.
Yes?
Is that the title?
That's the title. And David Brooks, a New York Times political editor and columnist, is the author of the book. You can also see David on PBS NewsHour on Friday evenings. He also spoke at a BYU forum in Provo a few years ago. His address there is worth reading. Leola and then Brent.
So what is next? Where you talk about your history and your life, but I know that's not the end.
You might have to repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, what is next? Leola says that I've outlined the last 40 years, but now what lies ahead?
What's your assumption that you're questioning?
Nancy just said, what assumption am I questioning? So, unlike any other transition in my adult life, I currently have no fixed plans.
Options are many.
Yeah, I have no fixed plans currently.
We'll revisit this.
I will certainly keep everyone updated when there are plans. I guess I do have some plans, right? We always have some minor plans. I want to live to be 102. And I know that in order to live that long, that I have to take good care of my body. And I plan to continue running right up until the day of my death. And although I don't have my phone with me, I have set my death date. And I've got a countdown calendar on my phone. I can give you the specific details later. Brent.
So I want to go back to that expect the unexpected and maybe ask you to unpack that a little bit. I mean, you get rejected from the school that you wanted to go to, but you had to have certain kind of traits or characteristics, persistence, resiliency, some of these things that are a part of that, right? Could you expound on that a little bit?
So Brent wants me to unpack expect the unexpected, and he says that I must have some characteristics of persistence and determination. So I can tell you that there have been 2 times in my adult life where I've been completely useless for several days. And one of those times was in getting the rejection letter from UCLA. Thank goodness for a stable and encouraging wife who said, you can't sit around and mope the rest of our lives. Get up and get moving and find a solution. I think I have considered myself optimistic as an adult. And so when these unexpected events have occurred, they've completely caught me off guard. So off guard that it has caused me to have to completely recalibrate and think things through. And that's where the relationships play a key role. And I hope that I can play the same type of mentorship and relationship role that Harold Madsen and Ray Graham played for me as I am interacting with younger colleagues who are facing challenges as well. I think even individuals that do possess the qualities of grit and perseverance do experience setbacks that cause them to pause and mourn for a day or two, but then to pick themselves up and get going. And I think that that perseverance and grit is not just solely within the individual, but those that also surround us. Our perseverance can be waning a bit, but the perseverance of others around us can help us rekindle and get that flame going again. Rebecca Roberts.
It was funny hearing that name. I was like, who's that? It's been a long time, but it's no secret then that we were your students when we were in the master's program, and it's also no secret that you're actually one of our favorite teachers and our own role model for good teaching. And for me, as a classroom teacher, I never felt that you were a lecturer. I felt that you were an excellent example of a facilitator. And I felt like you were so good at listening and encouraging students to share their ideas. So I wanted to know what was the reason, or how did you develop your own teaching style? Did you have a person who was your own role model? Or how did you develop the style of teaching that you did? What influenced you?
Okay, so Becky Roberts-Wolfersberger has asked the question of how have I developed my teaching style? I can name key educators, starting with Mrs. Young, who was my kindergarten and first grade teacher, Mrs. Millarton in the second grade, Mrs. Swan in 7th grade speech class, Mr. Fleming in grades 10, 11, 12 as the debate coach, Mr. Nyman as the orchestra director in 6th grade, 7th, and 8th, Mr. Swenson in high school orchestra, Diane Schallert at the University of Texas at Austin, Elaine Horowitz at UT Austin, Harold Madsen and Cheryl Brown at BYU, Glenn Prost at BYU. All of these are individuals that I watched carefully. Now, an interesting thing emerged in the TESOL 390 class, and half of my class are here today. Yesterday, Bree, who is sitting on the back row here, commented about her, was it your 5th grade teacher, Bree? Yeah, Bree talked about her 5th grade teacher, and it wasn't until later in Bree's life that she looks back on that 5th grade teacher and sees what the teacher was doing to orchestrate what was happening. It wasn't until I was in the PhD program in Austin that I really started focusing explicitly on how do good educators train teachers. And it was a combination of Diane Schallert and Elaine Horowitz, that watching them teach and watching how they prepared us to come to class so that the face-to-face interaction in class would not end up being a lecture, but a discussion. So I have all of these educators that I can look back at and recognize how phenomenal they were. I forgot my grandmother. She taught, I think, 3rd grade when I was young, and she had some old desks. None of you are old enough to remember this, which is interesting. They used to have desks that were anchored on like a railroad track type beam so that you could not space the desks apart from each other. And Grandma had 3 of them in the basement. And when we would go visit at Grandma's house, many times with my siblings and my cousins, we would go to the basement and play school. And I was the teacher. Oh, Marianne, did I see your hand?
Yes.
We'll take this as the last question and then end it.
So I think my question is appropriate. As you reflect, we're very fortunate and blessed to have you be a part of our BYU Hawaii Ohana. As you reflect on your time here, you could have been anywhere in the world with your credentials and your caliber of professionalism in the field. Can you reflect on some poignant moments here at BYU Hawaii that you will take away with you?
So Marianne's question is related to my opportunity here at BYU Hawaii and what are some takeaways that I will have leaving this campus. The thing that drew me here and continues to cause me to be very, very grateful that this is where I came for the final 7 years is the international student population on this campus. Of all of the universities within the church education system for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is the only campus that has a mandate to serve a targeted population of learners from the Pacific Island nations and Pacific Rim countries. And because more than 50% of the students on campus are international students, this is a unique setting unlike any other place in the world. I think also the fact that this is a relatively small campus with 3,000 students and half of them being international, there's no place like this anywhere else. So for a TESOL professional, where else would you want to be? We've got the TESOL BA program and we've got the EIL program. That combination of being able to continue teaching language and to train teachers is a unique collaboration and partnership that I am very grateful that this is where I came for the final years of my career. Thank you all. A big mahalo to all of you who are here and to those that joined us and or will watch this later. Mahalo.